Hey listeners, let's talk about revolutionizing your mining operation with Foreman. This isn't your average management tool. It's an all-in-one solution for reducing costs and significantly boosting your revenue. Foreman brings a cutting-edge dashboard to your fingertips, empowering you with automated energy strategies. This means not only curtailing around real-time prices, but also strategically enhancing your profit margins through demand response. It's about leveraging energy efficiency to its fullest potential. With Foreman, you get a system that scales with your business, inventory management for assets, infrastructure integration, and business intelligence. Foreman elevates the cash flow and production of your entire operation. To see how Foreman can redefine your mining operation standards, visit foreman.mn. With Foreman, you're not just managing a mining operation, you're setting a new standard in the industry.
Accelerated by Compass is the premier accelerator program for Bitcoin mining sites at any stage of development. Our managed services provide expert guidance in site procurement, construction, energy agreements, and mining operations. Compass helps clients meet timelines and expectations for operational excellence, from greenfield to retrofits and everything in between. Don't just mine, excel. Visit compassmining.io now to discover how Accelerated by Compass can power your success.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Zach, welcome back to the Mining Pod. Thanks for joining again.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
I think this is third or fourth recording.
I think so.
I think third.
Yeah, I think third too.
Yeah. So you guys have had a lot of changes since we did the last one. And I think the most memorable line from last time was how you guys were, you had an ATM in early 2023, I believe, and definitely correct me on this. Mm-hmm. And you talked about using that money responsibly to start fueling your growth until bull market. And then we've seen that, which is kind of cool to like reflect on that. And even I brought that up on a lot of different shows, like you guys kept to that strategy and now you've grown so much. So I don't think we need to do like buy or anything like that because the audience is pretty warmed up. So like, I'd love just to hear your recap for the last 12 months or so with all the growth.
Cool. Yeah. It's been a while, 12 months to say the least. A lot of growth. That's been our focus is growing responsibly, as you said. It's funny to think back because, we were talking about, it may have been 12, 18 months ago. We did this and we were still talking in the, hey, we're going to go prove ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think now the biggest thing to me is like, hey, we have a track record. We're going to stick to it. Yeah. ATMs seem really scary. It's this, tool to raise capital. But it's one of the best tools. It's really cheap capital. Yeah. It's very light touch capital. And you only use it when you have something to do it. Mm-hmm. So overall, since we became Bitcoin miners, we've raised, not just in ATMs, but in some offerings, about $1.4 billion. Mm-hmm. And we've turned that into our market cap right now, which, depending on where the price is today, and it's a Bitcoin conference, which means the price is always down.
Why does it always happen?
You can count on it. That, we're right around $4 billion. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we've looked at it to say, hey, we took capital, we invested the capital, we basically turned it into something, 2.5, 3 times. Mm-hmm. And I think that capital also will prove out to be much more valuable into the next bull run. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we've plateaued or anything like that. I think we've got a bull it's going to come in the fall. That's my prediction. Mm-hmm. And it's about being in the right place at the right time. So, in the last 12 months, we doubled our hash rate last year. We then have doubled it in the last 6 months, where we were under 10 at the beginning of the year. And now we're just over 20. Yeah. And we're on a path to, add another 12 on top of what we're doing. So we're, I believe, right now, the largest self-mining company in the U.S. from actual, owned, operated. We own it top to bottom and actually operating hash rate.
That's crazy to think about that. This is kind of an aside, but how do you think about the mine work that you're doing specifically now that it's gone from like a small site that you can kind of walk into, and now you guys are in Georgia, Mississippi, Wyoming, maybe another state, if I'm not mistaken. But
let's see, Georgia, Mississippi, Wyoming, Tennessee just got announced.
Oh yeah,
hasn't closed yet. Yeah. So, but we will be in Tennessee.
It's like a different organization now. Completely.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
But it takes really good teams.
Yeah.
I put our team up against anybody. I think we've got the best one out there. My job's changed a lot. I used to actually be able to help plug in miners, and there was a really fun part about that. And now we're just so big. It's, if you can't delegate, you can't get the job done. So for me, I've seen a big change there. But what we've really focused on is at the site level.
Yeah.
We've really pushed to keep our culture, but also the processes exactly the same. We pride ourselves on our really high uptime, and to duplicate that across multiple sites comes because we try and stamp the same process, procedure, culture fit, everything else. Really having a lot of grit is what we focus our teams on, because it's, running a mine isn't,
it's hard work.
It's not just walking around with a clipboard. You actually have to do, it's manual labor to a certain degree.
And you guys keep picking the south, so it's a little hot there.
Yes, it is right now.
It's a little
brutal.
It's a much. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about is like your guys' focus on Bitcoin mining and not all the shiny toys out there, not the AI HPC stuff. So Matt had a great tweet about this.
Yeah.
It was kind of a longer tweet, and just going into like, you guys are focused on Bitcoin. You think like that's the greatest resource for not just like everyday people, but just you as a company, the greatest maximization for your shareholders. Can you walk me through that thinking a little bit more? And then like, what do you guys think about the AI HPC stuff? Because it is obviously super attractive to so many people, but you guys kind of stand out as people who are not actively talking about it at the very least. Like, you guys are focused on Bitcoin.
First things first, what Matt said matches what we're doing inside.
Yeah.
What I always say is strategy over ideology.
Yeah.
And that means that we should measure what we do today versus an idea that we've really cemented ourselves in yesterday. As a result, never say never is what I would say, but we're not moving into that space because it's a different business. Anybody that announces this needs to admit to it.
Yeah.
It is a different business. The best thing about Bitcoin mining, in my opinion, is you have no customers. You serve Bitcoin, Bitcoin serves you. And so if you think about having HPC, you have to have a sales team. You have to have customers. You have to have agreements about uptime, what you're going to provide, the value that's going to be transferred. You then have to collect. What happens if your customer doesn't pay you?
Yeah.
There's all these pieces that go into it. And one of the groups that has actually run a data center is us.
Yeah.
So we've had customers. It wasn't HPC based. It was your traditional data center side.
Yeah.
It's a pain.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin mining produces amazing margins. And why would we spin up a new business line?
Yeah.
So what do I think about, in the future? Well, I think that we have a huge amount of value in our energy contracts. I think for the industry as a whole, that hasn't really been factored in from like a true valuation point of view.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, if we so chose, we could take an old site in 3 years and we could knock it down and we could build a data center, right? But that's the other thing is you have to build something new. And if you look at timelines in building a data center, it's like 3 years a lot of times to build a true high quality data center. And so that's 3 years of lost revenue. So there's a lot of reasons not to do it as opposed to reasons to do it. Where I think you're going to see the announcements and where they have been, it's miners that have fallen behind on hash rate, and there's a need to diversify. If we were in that position, I would probably think different strategically about the interest of jumping in. But what I can't emphasize enough is anybody that's announcing it, they've got a timeline to build.
Yep.
They've got a timeline to find a customer. They've got a timeline to monetize that.
Yeah.
And you just have to be real about it. And then you have to ask the question, one, are you going to be good at it?
Yeah.
And two, do you really want to compete against all the hyperscalers? Because if I could choose between X or Amazon for their AWS services, and I'm a university, let's say, I'm probably just going to choose AWS.
Yeah.
So, and do I want to compete that way? I don't. Not right now. So.
What do you think about the mullet miners, where it's like a little Bitcoin here, a little AI here, but they're making it work using the tools they have? And I don't want to make you a comment on anyone else, but I'd say like the Iris Energies of the world or the TeraWolves of the world are kind of restrapping or refitting some of their current stuff and trying to like make it work both ways. I just want to notch like a little deeper on that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, is it going to provide valuable, real, scalable revenue?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be something that makes a great headline?
Yeah.
That's the only question to ask.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I'm not going to say any names. I think there's one miner that's doing it right.
Yeah.
And they've worked on it for years and they've set themselves up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one thing, you can have really high margin revenues. Let's just say we did a pet project and it was $1 million of revenue and I made 70% margins.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a very small number when you look at the rest of our mining revenues.
Yeah.
Well, what did I have to do to generate that, right? Sure, it's great margins on this project. Do I have a sales team now? Do I have R&D?
Yeah.
What did it cost me to refit a site? You know, what was the investment and how long does it take me to get my investment back?
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do, we measure in ROI.
Yeah.
And the timelines to getting a return on your investment, 9 times out of 10 are much longer in an AI case than they are in a Bitcoin case, because I can just be up quicker, I can be up cheaper, and I can, turn it into revenue faster.
Cool.
So,
okay, thanks for letting me double click on that. For your guys' sites, you guys have had a lot of headlines, and the Griid one is probably the cherry on top of all the other ones that have also been really interesting. Walk me through how you guys have been selecting energy. Seems to be mostly a U.S. play, and I'm wondering if you guys would ever grow outside the U.S. I think we've even talked about that on prior shows. But when and where would it make sense to grow outside the U.S., and how have you gone through the selection process of picking up, say, the site in Wyoming or this new deal with Griid?
Yeah. So, we built a lot in Georgia, and we hit a point where, we knew that grid really well. We are still building in Georgia.
Yeah.
But we wanted to diversify from, our footprint point of view. So we have 8 sites in Georgia, 3 in Mississippi now. Mm-hmm. Tennessee is going to be the next big move with the Griid acquisition. We plan to build 400 megawatts here. Wyoming, we're really excited about. Mm-hmm. It is happening soon. We have the agreements. Obviously, I think everybody knows. There was a little bit of government involvement, not related to us, but with the seller that we just have to work through the regulatory process. But Wyoming's going to be big for us. And so we're looking at all these megawatts in the U.S., and it's kind of the easy answer. It's a safe regulatory environment, especially in the states we're picking. Mm-hmm. They're fairly Bitcoin-friendly states or business-friendly states. The power's there. It's abundant. A lot of the grids we work in are focused on having abundant power. Yeah. There's a state that's missing in our portfolio, and it's Texas. Again, never say never, but we haven't seen the opportunity because we see it, one, is crowded, and it's a state structure built on a lack of abundance. We want to run 24/7. We're here to mine Bitcoin. Yeah. Energy becomes a much more secondary, revenue stream. Mm. So we've been selecting power that way. We've always been grid connected. Yeah. We think being partners with the grids, partners with the communities are really important. And that's how we built everything, is really on those relationships. Now, international. Yeah. We are very interested in international, but we're not going to go international just to go international. Yeah. We do think that the U.S. provides great opportunities. Yeah. I think there's corners of the market that think, oh, you have to leave the U.S. It's terrible. It's never going to work. Yeah. And some of that was rhetoric around, the Biden administration and the taxes or different things like that. Yeah. We think the U.S. is still one of the best places in the world to do business. Yeah. So when we move international, I'm sure we will, it's going to be for the right opportunity. So we don't want it to be 10% better than an opportunity in the U.S. We want it to be meaningfully better. Yeah. Because when you add geographic risk, new cultures, potentially new languages, new governments, all of those things, well, it should have a risk-based return on that, like that investment. When that happens, we will move international. Okay. And, we also got the question too about name. Oh, we're America's Bitcoin miner. Yeah, yeah. We still think that that's important internationally. Yeah. So it's not going to shy away from it. A lot of companies to be taken seriously are perceived as large U.S.-based companies when they move international, and that is good for credibility in these other countries. We're seeing the same thing in our conversations internationally. So we see just as a side note, we don't see a need to move away from kind of the naming or the mindset or anything like that.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: Cleanspark, America's Bitcoin miner. At Cleanspark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale, we've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind Cleanspark's success at cleanspark.com.
Okay, so we got the international thing done. Let's talk about the Griid deal. That was huge. It's very cool to see. Like, I think just team-wise, the Bitcoin community is very tight, especially the Bitcoin mining community. And so like a lot of people are happy to see like two teams like that come together. Yeah. So walk me through like the whole process with that. Why you guys were interested in them, why it made sense from a financial perspective, and then how you guys kind of want this deal to unfold. I know it's still pending. Yeah. But would love to hear all about it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let me jump into it. We're super excited about that. And we did it for the team. Like you mentioned, it's two teams coming together. That team is the example of when things are hard from a regulatory side. They had a lot set up going back almost 3 years ago. Yeah. And really on their go public transaction, they just got held up. Perception being, of course, that the SEC was just done letting Bitcoin mining companies go through on the go public process. And it just turned into this very long cycle. They finally got public at the beginning of the year. But, being public isn't this like magic wand that makes it so you have access to capital and you can accomplish things. You have to have liquidity, you have to have exposure. And by the time they made it public, there's companies like ours and lots of other companies at scale. So an investor has a choice of, where they're going to put their dollars, which makes it hard to, build from there. Yeah. And so we saw that there's this company with a lot of opportunities just under the surface, but also a company that wasn't situated well to actually execute on the opportunities just due to how capital markets work. And so, bringing the teams together where we have great access to capital and we have great teams and we know how to build and manage and scale. By the way, I still don't think the market fully understands how good Griid is and the people. Yeah. But we, intend to have 100 megawatts live before the end of this year. Now, they have over 60 already. Yeah. So we're, just have a leap to make there. And so, the next couple 100 megawatts after that, we aim to do 400 over the next 3 years. Their relationships in Tennessee are really important.
Yeah. They have great connections there. Yeah. So
there's a lot of power available in Tennessee when you partner with the Griid and when you communicate with the Griid. It's still, I'll say it, TVA is great, but they're also very skeptical of miners because, 5, 6, 7 years ago, not every interaction with miners was good. When things went south for Bitcoin in 2017, it kind of left a bit of chaos in Tennessee. So we want to come here and we want to do everything we can also from like a political and business side to repair the view of Bitcoin from a capital point of view, because we're going to come in, bring a lot of capital in, invest a lot, and we're going to be financially responsible and, make sure all these power companies get paid and, don't get stuck on the back end. So I think Tennessee is going to be great. And I think that their relationships merging with our capital and our team is what unlocks Tennessee as like this, hopefully, just like we did in Georgia is what we like to say. Yeah. We built 400 megawatts in about the same time period in Georgia. We want to do the same in Tennessee.
From a infrastructure standpoint, if I'm not mistaken, Griid has like a lot of old generation units like S9 and things like that. And that's just based on like their reporting about like their average terahash per machine. Have any of your guys' purchases been kind of like forward looking to like fill in those rack spaces, or you guys have made any of those decisions yet? And how are you guys looking at that rack space?
Yeah, so we have 100,000 S19 or S21 Pros coming right now, and we're going to use those in those rack spaces.
Okay.
So again, an undercapitalized company with good power contracts, good relationships, but we're going to fill all those shelves up with brand new, shiny S21 Pros.
Nice. Taylor's got a lot of work out of him.
Yes, he does.
From a team perspective, how are you guys thinking about putting things together? Because they've even done stuff like with Intel chips, things like that. So have you guys gotten to that point of kind of like merging the two teams, or?
That gets into like a little bit more details on the intricacies, but what I can say is we're going to look to replicate what we've done.
Nice.
When it comes to Intel chips, things like that, we've chosen, just like we've chosen not to do AI, to not overly spend on R&D.
Yeah.
We've manufactured before in the energy side.
Yeah.
Manufacturing's hard, and it's hard to outperform somebody else that only manufactures.
Yeah.
So we will continue to buy miners from third parties, many third parties, hopefully.
Yeah.
But whatever's the best is what we want to be buying when we're buying. And so if, Intel or Block or somebody new comes up with a great miner, we'd love to buy those.
Yeah.
If kind of the names stay similar, then we'll be buying those. But, how that works from a team meshing point of view, they've got a lot of great team members.
Yeah.
And we look to, bring most or all of them, on board.
Yeah.
But, from an R&D side, which was specific to kind of your question, there's probably some differences there in how we look at things.
Yeah, because they were one of the 4 miners that bought those Intel chips. And so I was just wondering about that. Okay, I want to go back to something you said earlier, actually, which was that Texas market is it's flipped, where it's scarce. Energy is a scarce asset. You guys have been working in Georgia, Tennessee, Wyoming, and you guys like an energy company first, right? Cleanspark's been around forever as an energy company. Is there something specific to like how that market works with Texas versus Georgia, where it's like you have just a demand market, I suppose, I don't know what the phrase is, versus Georgia's a capacity market, or is it flipped the other way around?
So there's a couple ways. So let's talk about what Texas is, in total. It's kind of an islanded market, and it's on purpose. So ERCOT is really Texas state thing, and it's not connected to other grids. So the ability to bring in more power from different corners is limited. Plus, Texas is huge. So there are places where there's incredibly abundant power in Texas. It's stranded. You can't get it to anywhere because there's no transmission. The problem that the Texas market has, though, is one, they're doing better at transporting that power. But 2, it has a peak capacity that's like a true limit. In a lot of other grids, when a utility provider hits their ceiling from a capacity point of view, they just call the utility next door, simplifying it, of course.
Yeah.
They, utility next door imports power, or they turn on additional generation. When Texas turns on its extra generation, or there's generation that failed, like what happened, with the freeze that happened 3 years ago, that's it. There's nothing left. Yeah. And so miners are perfect for this, and I will give you that. They shut down. They get demand response credits. Yeah. They go through that route. But what they're not doing is they're not mining. Also, if you look at how they have worked with their coincidental peaks, you have to be very aggressive in trying to miss the 4 peaks to keep your low power price, right? Yeah. And again, there's intricacies in all of this. Yeah. But when we move into a place, we measure it. What's going to look like for us to mine 24/7? Yeah. With the exception of when the utility has a true capacity issue, usually in emergencies, which we do participate in multiple capacity programs in Georgia and other locations, where if there's a true shortage, we turn off and we get the same benefits. But we're still looking at this as we're going to locations where we can be up 99% of the time. And so any curtailment or adjustments to our uptime is usually economic-based or emergency-based. Okay. In Texas, yes, you get compensated, but do I want to mine 30% less Bitcoin and trade those for an energy credit, which I can never turn into Bitcoin? Yeah. And because we believe in Bitcoin and what Bitcoin means on a long-term basis from an increased value point of view, I want the Bitcoin, not the energy credit. And so that's why we go into places that have more than enough power, because we want to be running 365, 24/7. Okay. And that's how we see it right now.
It's a very different play than, the riots of the world, which are trying to just accumulate power credits during the summer oftentimes. And that brings us to like the value of Bitcoin, which is a great time because we're at Bitcoin Nashville. You guys have a HODL strategy. I don't know exactly what the like percentage you guys try to sell or anything like that, but I'd be interested in learning like how you guys think about the value of that capital, that Bitcoin. And then to your point about like keeping machines online, high efficiency, working only in markets where you can keep units online. Why choose that strategy of mining more Bitcoin versus something else? Like, what is it about the Bitcoin that's going to become more valuable for your shareholders long term versus a different strategy like rides the world by getting energy credits and USD?
I think that Bitcoin will outperform, just like it has for the last 10 years, almost every other asset. And I think it's going to do it again in the next 10 years. And so if it's going to outperform all the other assets, that includes commodities such as energy and things like that. And again, we're in the business of exchanging energy for Bitcoin. So if I could earn credits or US dollars and immediately buy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin equivalence is not a real thing, but Bitcoin is, then that would be of interest to me. So our HODL strategy, again, going back to what I say is strategy over ideology, we have a strategy or a belief, that Bitcoin will go up. I've said it enough, but I'll say it again. My belief is the bull market kicks off sometime between September and January next year. And then however short or long it goes from there. But I think that's really when the next push, really happens. So based on that thesis, that's how we're thinking about Bitcoin and the HODL strategy. If you go back to the end of the last bull market, everybody was HODLing everything at the time. And we were the first ones to sell. Sold it all. And we sold it all because we believed our strategy is that it peaked, reached a state of euphoria, and we went from selling a little bit to cover our cost and HODLing the difference to selling everything and selling it every time. January of last year, when Bitcoin was around 22,000, feeling was market's flipped, Bitcoin's going to climb back up. Now's the time to start HODL. And we HODLed like 80% the first month and like 90 and then 100. And we're right around like almost all the Bitcoin. We sell a few here and there for little things. But I think we had less than 10 Bitcoin sold every single month the last 10 months. Almost everything is being held because we believe, we took, X amount of dollars, turn it into Bitcoin. And if it's going to be worth double that or something in the near future, we'd rather hold it till it becomes double. Will we sell Bitcoin again in the future? Yes. When? We're going to do it. We're going to measure it real time. It could be tomorrow. It could be in 6 months. It can be when we feel the market is peaked and it's going to move back down. Because at that point, I'm not going to hold it because I think it might go down versus go up. We're going to be very pragmatic about it. But our goal is to return the most value to the shareholders. So, you think about raising capital. Let's go back to the ATM, right? I raise money now. I want to get my stock price higher based on what I invested in. Same thing with the Bitcoin. If I have, 400 million in Bitcoin, which I think we have a little over that right now, I would rather hold it till it's 800 million and then sell it and then use that Bitcoin that I now turn into dollars to build a site to get more Bitcoin. And that's really been our thought process is how can we use Bitcoin to get more Bitcoin? And sometimes that means sell it now to build something to mine more Bitcoin. Other times it means hold it so that when we sell it, it's worth a lot more and I can buy more Bitcoin then or mine more Bitcoin. So that's what's driving our thought process right now.
It's hot out this summer, and your ASICs might need some tender love and care. Contact Vitamine today for on-site ASIC repair. With Bitmain certified repair technicians, Vitamine has you covered, including repair shops in Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, and Washington State. Or have them travel to your site and train your team. PSUs, immersion tanks, hashboards, and more. If you think ASIC repair, think Vitamine. And for a limited time only, use code MININGPOD to get 20% off your hashboard repair. Again, that's code MININGPOD to get 20% off your hashboard repair. Contact Dan today at dan@vmasic.com and let him know that the Mining Pod sent you.
What do you think about like the Sailor strategy of just holding it and then flipping it for like, you just keep expanding your share base, buy more Bitcoin with it? It seems what Marathon is trying to attempt kind of right now as well. Any thoughts on that?
I think that, their leverage strategy, which is what they're doing. You go raise a bond, you go raise a bunch of debt, you buy Bitcoin. I think it is a strategy. And I think that there's a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
But if you also look at what, he's really done is he has turned his software company into a leveraged Bitcoin structure, right?
Yeah.
And for that to work, the Bitcoin has to go up. He then pays the debt off.
Yeah.
Whatever's left, the company keeps, or he turns it into the treasury strategy, and you go from there. When, as a miner, I think not confusing strategies is helpful for investors. Are you a miner? Are you a leveraged play? We already get the benefit of the fact that, if we can, let's say we have 50% margins. Again, this changes every day because Bitcoin goes up and then it goes down and so forth. So I'm going to just use a theoretical. If we have a 50% margin, it means I'm still buying Bitcoin essentially for half the price that it costs Saylor to buy it. So he's using debt to buy it that way. And then he is using the upside to pay off his leverage and having a delta, at the end. Or real refinance and, just keep rolling it. On our side, we already see that we're 50% ahead in that scenario just by holding the Bitcoin. So I don't need to go buy a bunch of debt or buy Bitcoin even, because if I go buy Bitcoin, it's not the same because I paid market for it.
Yeah.
So, we've had opportunities and, again, never say never, but we've chosen not to just go buy $100 million of Bitcoin, because with a little bit of patience, I'll just mine 100 million of Bitcoin for 50 million. So I'm already better off if with a little bit of patience, and it didn't cost my shareholders any extra. They didn't pay 50 million more, because that's ultimately, if you use equity capital just to buy Bitcoin, now I need to make sure that the upside on that Bitcoin is the same upside as I think I can get through the stock value to my shareholders through mining. And it's not a one-to-one there. So, again, right time, right place for all strategies. There's a reason we do things differently so that people do have different levels of exposure. But, from a leveraged debt, not the right time in my opinion.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys flipped Riot's market cap earlier this year, which was cool. Big moment for the Sparkies, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Historically, it's been Marathon, Riot, and then everyone else. And that's changed the cycle. And I'm wondering just if you have any advice or thoughts for people, not even necessarily in Bitcoin mining, but just someone who's kind of sitting in a similar chair as you at a different company that's maybe listed or wants to be listed. What are some things that helped you guys keep your eye on the North Star and get there as a company to be able to, change the topography of the mining landscape just within a few years, right? You guys went from middle of the pack to top of the pack just from 3 to 4 years execution. So if you were on, I don't know, some sort of business podcast and they asked you about how you guys did this as a team, what would be some things that you'd come to mind immediately?
Perspective and having a long perspective. So we believed, and it's proven out, that we were on the right strategy. But, to what you said, there were two names. So if there was any press in 2022 in particular, press release came out, CNBC was talking about miners. There was only 2 miners they mentioned. And I think that was driving an immense amount of value to those 2 miners because it was the exposure that was seen. We knew we didn't have it, and we knew it wasn't going to happen automatically. And so we felt, and what we did is we knew we had a winning strategy, and we just executed. And so we were from a position, a little bit of the underdog position, just knowing that we were slow and steady was going to win the race.
Yeah.
I also think that an advantage we had and something we were observing was, execution wasn't always happening in some of the other miners. Maybe people are asleep at the wheel. There's also a lot of fear of growth during the bear market.
Yeah, there was. I think there's a lot of hangover from last cycle.
Yeah. And what we did is we knew that if we grew but didn't use debt, it was going to prove out eventually. We didn't know when that bull market was going to hit.
Yeah.
But we knew that assets were cheap and that we could buy them. And if you looked at when assets were expensive, the amount of shares you would have had to sell to acquire those same assets, it was almost the same.
Yeah.
It was just markets had changed and assets had gone 90% cheaper, but our stock maybe had gone down by, a different percentage. We were actually more advantageously, we were less dilutive and more accretive in the bear market than we would have been in the bull market buying the same assets at peak. So we just took that true perspective of, hey, even though it seems bad, it's actually better when you measure with like a clear view on this.
Yeah.
And then it took boldness. It took like everybody said, you're not going to hit your targets. We're the only miner that actually reached our guidance in 2022. So when everything kind of fell apart, we were the only one. And I think that's the other piece that's led for us to be successful.
Yeah.
We don't say things we don't intend to do. And then we go out and we do them. Doesn't mean that things can't happen. Standard fill got delayed by, 38 days.
Yeah.
And so it pushed us past the end of the year.
Yeah.
But for us, we said we did everything in our power and we ended up waiting on somebody, right? But when we say we're going to do something, we do it. And if it's inside our power, we accomplished it.
Yeah.
We don't chase headlines. That's a big deal for us. It can be tempting, right? But like we don't chase headlines. And if it seems like we're quiet, it means we're getting it done. We're getting the real work done. And then when there is an announcement, it means something. And so that's been our focus. Keep our heads down. Don't worry about the noise. Don't chase shiny keys or anything like that. It's just about performing. And on a performance basis, it will get recognized at some point. So that works for any business. It doesn't matter whether you're in Bitcoin mining or whether you're, farming. If you just perform and you produce the best output, it'll get noticed and you get rewarded. And I think that that's the number one thing. And there's always going to be an advisor that calls you up and says, hey, these guys are talking about X, Y, and Z, and you should say it.
Yeah.
An example of this actually in our industry is in the last 3 years, you pick a point in time and, everybody want to talk about megawatt capacity.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, wait, megawatts don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the number of machines I have. Oh, wait, that doesn't mean anything. Oh, let's talk about hash rate capacity, what it could be, not what it is.
Yeah.
And we've always just said the same thing. So all those things existed. They're all things that were reported, but we focused on the same thing.
Yeah.
What's our actual production? What are we actually going to produce? What's the actual online operating hash rate, not machines that could theoretically be plugged in? And I think just by being that doesn't take much transparency, but just being a little bit transparent with the market and just getting it done, I think is what's also earned the trust that we ended up getting in the market.
Love it. Okay, a few fast questions as we wrap up here.
It.
You guys have 20 exahash now. Would you guys ever consider looking at launching a pool, or are you guys pretty happy with what you're at, what you're doing, and the strategy for like continuing to have good luck for the market?
Foundry's great. It's predictable. You don't have to rely on luck. You just get paid for hash, which is really great.
Yeah.
The difference in the upside is very negligible, and it's like very spiky. Sure, you can say, oh, this 1 week in April, it would have been X different or Y different.
Yeah.
But will we have a pool at some point? Yes.
Okay.
And here's why. It's not going to be because over revenue and predictability and luck. It's going to be because Bitcoin needs to continue to be diversified, and we're going to get so big that it's going to be important for the network. Awesome. That's why we're going to have a pool.
Okay. That's a great answer. For Bitcoin development, do you guys at Cleanspark actively look at things that are happening within like Bitcoin dev world, or are you guys mostly focused on the energy and mining side?
We focus energy and mining. We keep track of it just to see if there's interesting projects. We like the idea of funding those indirectly to the extent there's something that's better for Bitcoin. Yeah. That's how we see it. But we like, the core devs. We think the core devs are where the money needs to go. Yeah. So core dev, we will in the future be contributing even more than we have in the past. We think that's first and foremost. We don't plan to develop anything. Again, we don't want to chase shiny keys. And we want to make sure capital spent returns to shareholders. And we think that the right way to do it is stay focused. Again, never say never, but yeah.
What do you think about the new units that are coming out right now? Like Auradine to Intel to Block to new MicroBT, stuff like that. How are you guys looking at that? And it's unfair for like a 30-second question, but.
Yeah. No, this is great. Here's what I think is important.
Yeah.
I think all of those groups need to compete for quality.
Okay.
And price and terms. They need to compete as products.
Okay.
What I don't want to see, and this is an unpopular opinion, is I don't want to see one picked for any other reason, politically or otherwise. Just because something's made in one place or another shouldn't choose winners. And no one should be forced to buy a product over that. Okay. So that's my answer is I'm really excited to see competition. Competition's healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised actually how well some of the groups that have been lagging further behind are catching up quicker than I thought. And there's really cool stuff happening.
Yeah.
We're excited about. We want to be customers to all of them. It just matters scale. We're going to be a 5% customer to this one or 90% customer to that, or we're going to be 20% to all of them. I'd love to buy all their units, but they need to compete on real quality products. And that's what I want to see come out of the market.
Okay, that's awesome. When do we get to a zetahash?
I don't know.
Yeah. We're like almost 600 right now.
Yeah.
Well, the next one will be 600, I think.
I think it'll be a little longer than we think it is.
Okay.
And here's why. I think that we're going to see a lot of the hash rate over the last cycle was stacked hash rate. It was because the S19s proved, the J Pros in particular, proved to stay good for so long.
Yeah.
I think that what we're going to see first is we're going to see a flattening of hash rate a little bit with new units. Even though that unit produces more hash rate than a J Pro, for example, that's going to go on a new shelf, I think we're going to see a lot of fleet refreshes over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
And so, yes, a facility will go from 1 exahash to 2 exahash.
Yeah.
But it didn't go to 3.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it could take 3 years instead of 18 months. So that's my I'm gonna be wrong on that one. I know that, but I think that there's gonna be an upgrade cycle that affects what would be the otherwise time.
Okay. Awesome, Zach. Thanks for joining the show again. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.